James. The big accident down the road too. That's good. Yeah, no, Four Corners, I was sitting in that jungle.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wasn't paying attention.
Caught in an accident.
Yeah, because I was waiting for, I had car trouble. I've been sitting at VIP. Mhm.
Another way to use them is too late.
Are you ready to deal with the meeting? Okay, you can sworn in. Okay, time being 6:35, we'll finally get underway for the zoning board meeting for the month of April. Running a little late, we'll cover a few things real quickly and then we'll move on. The minutes from the last meeting of April 3rd, which was relatively short. You were here, I believe, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes, you were. And,
Move to accept those if you
you move to accept?
Awesome.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's done. Okay, now it's time to appoint officers for the ensuing year. Take nominations.
Nominate Joe Plessner for chairman.
Okay,
Second?
I second.
we have a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I nominate Mr. Brown here as our vice chair. You second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Gets even. Okay, there's nothing of significance in correspondence other than a couple of magazines that you can peruse at your leisure later if you wish. Our first meeting tonight, the continuation of the case 1203, appeal from administrative decision. And case 1204, the variance hearing for 570 Laconia Road. Tilton, New Hampshire, tax map R9, lot 53. Is everybody familiar with the location and stuff of the property? Does anybody need to disqualify themselves? Okay, in that case, you're on.
Thank you. I heard you say variance case, and there's actually two cases, I believe. One is an appeal of administrative
Right,
decision.
didn't I read that?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I thought you said variance. I'm sorry.
I said both, I thought I said both, but
No.
you're right,
Both.
there's two issues here, the administrative decision, appeal from administrative
Gotcha.
decision, and the ZBA, and the variance hearing.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I heard my ears perked up when you said variance, and
I may not have said it.
that's okay. But my name, for the record, my name is Stephen Nixon. I'm an attorney representing John Bernard regarding this property, and we'd like to discuss the appeal of administrative decision first, and then decide as to whether the application for the variance, whether John will move forward with that or not, depending on how the board rules. If that's okay with the board.
It's your show.
I do have some memorandums here. For your reading pleasure. This is an appeal of an administrative decision of the planning board regarding setbacks and whether parking and driveways are allowed within the setback, or access roads, I'll use that term, under the ordinance. And at the December 13th, 2011 planning board meeting, that Mr. Bernard was there for 570 Laconia Road, there was discussion regarding whether the parking was allowed in the setback or not, and it was suggested that he come to the ZBA. What we take away from the minutes of that meeting is that at that point the planning board interpreted that parking was not allowed in the setback. So we're asking this board to overturn that decision of the planning board and find that parking is allowed in setbacks, parking and access roads. The issue at hand is an issue of what's called administrative gloss. And administrative gloss is it's a common law doctrine that the court has recognized for a long period of time, that when an ordinance is ambiguous in reading it, that if the town has applied the ordinance in a certain way for many years and to many pieces of property, that becomes the interpretation of the ordinance, and the only way to change that would be through town meeting vote. In this particular case, and I'll go through this in a little more detail, but in this particular case, Mr. Bernard believes that, first of all, the ordinance is ambiguous the way it's written, and the zoning board, the planning board has been applying it to allow parking and access roads within the setback for a very long period of time. The ambiguity in the ordinance comes from reading the definitions of setbacks, structures, accessory uses, or buildings. And when you read all those together, there's terms sort of intermingled within all those definitions, and I have them written out here for you. I won't read it to you verbatim, but there's terms used within those different definitions that create an ambiguity, because if you interpret the definition of setback and the words in there one way, then it completely eliminates the meaning of the other sections, which would be definitions of structures and accessory use of buildings. And one of the rules one of the rules of statutory construction is that you have to interpret the ordinance so that all the words have meaning. So in other words, you can't interpret it in such a way that that in one section where it would nullify the other section. And that's where the ambiguity comes up in this ordinance. The real ambiguity is focused on the table of dimensional values, where it says accessory buildings may not occupy more than 10% of the side and rear setbacks. And that's the language that everybody has been focusing on. But again, you need to look at the definition of setback, the definition of structure, and the definitions of accessory use or building to try to understand what that means. And quite honestly, when you do that, it's not clear. And it apparently hasn't been clear for quite a while. At the January 24th Planning Board meeting, I was looking at the minutes of that meeting, and in that meeting there was discussion regarding amending the ordinance to try to clear up the ambiguity. And I'll just read a little section of it. Ms. Plesner said that she had contacted the LGC, which is the local government center, and or the local government center stated that this is a gray area, and if the board wanted to clear it up, it needed to make amendments, is basically what it said. I didn't read that verbatim, but so the local government centers recognize that it's a gray area. Ms. Plesner also stated that hearing that businesses have been allowed to expand the parking lots into the setback on the side and rear of the properties. That was at the January 24th meeting. At the January 10th meeting, there was more discussion regarding this, where Ms. Plesner said, I asked if again, she was talking to the local government center, I asked if the planning board was incorrect in the past by allowing parking in up to 10% of the side and rear setbacks. Indicates that she's acknowledging that the planning board has done this in the past. And the last sentence in that paragraph says this would remove the gray area. So essentially what we have here is the two, I'll call them elements, or the two tests for administrative gloss. One is that the language of the ordinance is ambiguous. And I think that with what I've given you here, and with the own admission by the planning board that this is an ambiguous statute, that it is in fact ambiguous. The second element of administrative gloss is whether the planning board has been applying the ambiguous terms in a certain way for a long period of time. And on the back page of this, I put together just some quick plans, and I will tell you that the last plan on that list should be crossed off, because I was mistaken when I put that on there, but the parking on that last plan is in a zone in town where there's a 0 setback, so that last plan doesn't apply, and I apologize for that. But what I've done here is I put together just some plans that were readily available. And not all of them got highlighted, but now, the way that the ordinance, the discussion went was that it wasn't just limited to whether parking and access roads, but any structures other than that at all, and then structures are defined as anything man-made, so that created more problems. So I've highlighted other things on these plans that would qualify as structures, which just adds the ambiguity. The South Bay Resort Condominium has parking and drainage in the setback. The Laconia Lakes Outlet, and I've highlighted along the front there, you can actually see the setback line where there's a whole line of parking in the setback. There's also an access road on the easterly end, which I've highlighted. The Shaw's Supermarket, the parking along the road is within the building setback, as well as the parking that abuts BJ's, and there's an access road that comes up between them that's in the setback. Lockmere Meadows, there's an access road within the setback, a small portion of it. The BJ's warehouse, and I made several enlargements of the BJ's plan because it's a little difficult to read. It's, but there is parking, and this is probably the easiest one to see, this enlargement here. This is BJ's building down the bottom here, and the parking that is behind VIP is up against the setback, or it's right up against the property line in that case. And I think those are the plans that I submitted, but on the, it's funny when I grew up in Guilford, been around here pretty much all my life, and when you drive down the road, someone see, did you see that? And coming down the road tonight, we were looking at, from John's business, we were looking at all the new parking lots and how many of these have parking that are basically right up to the property line. It's very evident. There was the Wendy's, the 99 restaurant, the new hotel, John's Windstorm Auto, which is an approved plan, has parking in the setback. So you don't have to go very far to see it. With that, we believe that we've met the criteria for administrative gloss, and we ask that the zoning board overturn the decision of the planning board and find that through the application of administrative gloss that parking and access roads are in fact allowed in the building setbacks.
I'm sorry?
We wouldn't copy of the decision, plan board. Is there an actual written decision, official?
I don't know, was that in the meetings minutes for the planning board?
What, a decision on,
The fact that they're saying that they can't use the setbacks for parking?
Was it a discussion or an actual
I
decision?
think it was a discussion, but not a
Was it
decision.
reprinted in verbatim in the minutes, or?
Well, here, if I may,
Where's the actual
here's the
decision?
minutes.
Thank you.
For the record, that was the minutes of the December 13, 2011.
Well, I can certainly understand the problem with this issue. It's reared its head in the past. Okay, and yeah, we've tried to get it cleared up, not we, but I mean, tried to get the planning board cleared up, and for some reason they just play games with it. And it is problematic,
Yeah.
because the way I see it, it's as gray as you described. And, is that really fair to apply something really because one person wants to interpret it one way and another one another way? I don't know. I mean, the issue itself is such to where if we make a decision to I guess in effect set a precedent to say that it just that the parking and the setbacks is not intended from the zoning ordinance itself, would that apply to all future activities that would happen that would involve?
If I,
Sure, shoot.
If I may,
Still on stage here.
the sort of the decision, as I see it, that's before the board, is whether the planning board has interpreted it and applied it in a certain way over a long period of time, whether, and which is really more of a factual question. You know, whether you disagree with that interpretation or not isn't really what we're asking for here. We're asking that the board find that the planning board has in fact applied it that way for a long period of time, therefore that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. And I understand what you're saying. I'm thinking of, for example, the hotel out there, the Hampton Inn, and the board dealt. We didn't deal with that. I don't think they ever got a variance or anything to go in that was applied that way, to where they just they let them.
And if I will, those are 50-foot setbacks.
And they're much further into the setbacks than what we're talking about.
I don't think it's some testimony from the,
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet. Does the board have any other thoughts
Well,
before I go to
you
the
know,
public?
the reason I wanted to know whether it was, actually documented as a written decision was, like you said, we don't have the authority to reverse that decision on our own. So I agree with what you're saying very much. We're basing it on precedent.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator,
Yes, sir.
Chairman. Is that a private conversation you're having, or is that
No,
one we could hear?
no.
Could you speak up so we can
Oh,
hear?
yeah, I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't realize.
Your mumble.
Yeah.
Good point.
I tend to do that sometimes, thanks for pointing that out.
Your wife told me that.
I think it comes down to us basically ruling on precedent that's been set previously, and not an actual documented decision by the planning board. Whether or not that qualifies as an administrative decision, I don't know.
I mean, they did make a decision to the point where they're sending it to us. So in a way, that establishes it as a decision, wouldn't you think?
I would say, yeah, it probably does.
No further input from the board here? Okay, I understand. I guess at this time, we can open it up to the public and see what the public has to say. Yes, Ms. Dawson?
May I suggest that the zoning board of adjustment members postpone their decision on this question and seek legal counsel before we allow a contractor and a developer to dictate what the meaning of our zoning articles are. We don't know what Sandra Plesner actually asked the local government center. We only know what conversation took place. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know the answers to. And before we set a precedent and perhaps change the meaning of our zoning, maybe we should set back and seek legal counsel with the facts that have been presented by this attorney and our own zoning with definitions.
Well, what are you looking for? Some kind of a letter, opinion?
Of
Opinion
course,
letter?
this opinion is one-sided, this opinion is in favor of a contractor.
True, but
Should we
didn't-
not
but
get
didn't-
an opinion on the side of the town?
Didn't LGC already give an opinion?
On what?
On the fact that
We
it's
don't know what,
terrain?
We don't know
what the question was asked, we don't know what information was given at local government center. And local government center, I myself, as a selectman for the past 12 years, have asked a question of local government center, and I've had another selectman ask that question in just slightly a different way, and I've gotten two different answers. The local government center does not represent the town of Tilton. My suggestion is that we find an attorney that represents the town of Tilton.
Who is the town's attorney?
The attorney that the town most often used for land use questions is Attorney Mark Puffer.
So what you're saying is that you want to go to him for an opinion?
Well, it's not,
Is that what
it's
you're
not up
saying?
to me to dictate to the
I know,
zoning board of
the-
adjustment, it's just my opinion that before we set this precedent, that the zoning board of adjustment get that opinion from someone who represents the best interests of the town of Tilton and not a developer.
Well,
Otherwise, we're setting precedent.
I hear what you're saying, although I don't see how you can get anything more than what we've already heard.
Well, I
Okay,
think we
because
present,
the zoning's not gonna tell them that, it goes both ways.
well, they brought in maps of projects, BJ's Wholesale. What were the zoning regulations when BJ Wholesaler went in? I don't remember. I suppose I could thumb through the files and find it. You know,
Well,
there's
the setbacks haven't changed for the Hampton Inn now, that I know for a fact. And I won't check for that.
so before we,
So the board allowed that to happen at that point in time, so they were looking at it as something that the setback could be used for, if the applicant wanted it.
the discussion of the Hampton Inn site plan review isn't here. We have no idea what was said there. We have no idea the intent of the planning board. I just think before you set a precedent, it'd be a good idea to have the town defended on our side by an attorney. Not simply have a developer's attorney dictate to us what our zoning means, or does not mean.
He's not doing it. He's merely pointing out the fact that it's a gray area.
Oh, let's find
And
out.
which I agree that it's gray. It's not clearly defined. And although the board's had many years in order to clarify that, they have chosen not to. So I mean, that's nothing I can really do
But
anything
now you're
about.
speaking for the planning board.
I'm just saying what they haven't done. I'm not speaking for them.
Well,
They're the
they're not
ones.
here to defend
Well,
themselves.
I'm not gonna debate that action with you.
Well, that's my point.
But I hear your point, and we'll move on from there. Jane?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If you allow this to take place, would it be a conditional use permit since there are wetlands involved? Is that what you would be granting?
No, wetlands are not involved. Okay.
Well,
This area here is actually
I
outside.
I have pictures, I walked it yesterday, and I have pictures of where the flag is, and I was standing in mud when the pictures were taken. So, you know, it is a very wet area there.
Well, I mean, we can only go what has been put before us as far as what we can see as wetlands and what the wetland setback is. What you have to step in on.
Well, I have
can't
pictures.
speak to.
Have you walked the area? Have you taken a look at the area?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Actually, a couple of months ago when
Okay.
this issue first came up.
Okay, and what did you find when you took the walk? I guess I'm wondering what you're planning to grant. Is it a conditional use
I'm not
permit?
planning to grant anything at this point in time.
All right,
Okay, so
Okay.
I think we're jumping the gun there. Yes, sir.
Well, I think you took the words right out of my mouth, is that the application that's before the board is the, as to whether access roads are allowed in the setbacks. And it's not about the specific plan that's before the planning board, because that's planning board issues if there's wetlands and things like that. We're just,
I concur totally, yes.
Took the words
I don't
out of
wanna
my
get involved with that. Other than we know what it is.
sure.
I totally lost my train of thought there. Yes, Pat?
I don't understand what the rules and regulations are completely, totally of the zoning board. However, I'm a little bit confused with what's taken place right now, because you're about to set a precedent based on a conversation, a discussion at a planning board meeting where there was no decision made. And what you're saying is, because there was no decision made at that meeting, you're assuming that the decision is being sent to the zoning board. How can we do that? I don't understand that.
Well, essentially, the planning board put the applicant in the position where we're not going to hear what you say, we're gonna send you to the board, and that's then we're here tonight.
Well, I suggest that you at least take the time to not only seek legal, because I concur totally with what Selectman Dawson is saying, but also take the time and look at the video and look at the discussion that took place at that planning board meeting. Because that is not, there were no decisions, there was a discussion. There wasn't anything that said, you go to the zoning board, or we can't make a decision, I think you should go to the zoning board. That was not the zoning board, that was not the planning board that I sat at with the same meeting that John Bernard sat at. Unless, you know.
Well, if you were at the meeting, what exactly is your interpretation of what was said to the applicant?
It was a discussion. It was a discussion between the planning board and John Bernard. There was no decision, it was a fact-finding discussion. So how can, in that fact-finding discussion, turn around to being no decision made, therefore I'm gonna have the zoning board come up with this? That part I don't get. I don't get that.
Well, any decision that the planning board would make outside of what's in the subdivision and things like that would be appealable to the zoning board if it has to do with zoning. So I mean, the zoning planning board wouldn't even have to make a statement that they have to go to the zoning board. Whatever decision the planning board came up with, if the applicant felt that it wasn't correct relative to what the zoning is saying, they would have the right to bring it before this board. That's cut and dry. There's really no area of
But now you have,
interpretation there.
but now what you're doing is you have a contractor that comes before the planning board, and they have a discussion on a couple of different items. I mean, there were 2 or 3 items that were brought up. There was a setback that were brought up, there was wetlands that were brought up. There were a number of different items that were brought up at that time. And I suspect that that's why we're bringing up the administrative ruling first, so that we could take care of the wetland setbacks after. But there were 2 or 3 different items at the same time that were being brought up. There were a number of different conversations going on, none of which was the decision at that time, except, if I remember correctly, was the setbacks.
If I may, and I'll read verbatim from the Tilton Planning Board minutes of December 13, 2011, that were approved. It says, Ms. Plesner made a motion to continue the planning board case 11-14 to February 14, 2012 at 6:35 p.m. to allow Mr. Bernard to meet with the ZBA for a variance. Seconded by Mr. Curley, voted, taken, and et cetera. Now, the sentence before that stated that Ms. Plesner suggested to Mr. Bernard, if this is the plan he's going to use, meet with the ZBA and seek a variance for the parking lot. So it's pretty clear that there was a vote taken here, that the planning board required Mr. Bernard to come to the ZBA for a variance, and what we're doing is appealing the decision of the parking that would require him to come here for that.
Well, now I'm totally confused, because it's an administrative rule at the beginning that you are seeking to make a decision on an administrative ruling, and now you're asking for the actual variance on the setback, so,
No.
you know.
No, you are confused, and what we're here is, in this hearing, is we're asking for an appeal of administrative decision based upon the planning board's application of the zoning ordinance that would require a variance. That is why we're here, and it's in the minutes.
I'd like for the record to state my concurrence with Selectman Dawson. I think that we should seek legal counsel in this before we set a precedent and put the town of Tilton at risk.
Talk to me.
I agree with Pat and Catherine on this. I don't see any grounds for an appeal of an administrative decision here. I think we should, go straight into the variance and forget all this phase one business. It's not germane. But I would recommend that we postpone our decision for 14 days so that we can just seek legal counsel with Attorney Puffer and verify this. That's my recommendation.
Want to make a motion to that effect?
And you just did. Didn't I?
Well, you said you recommend, you didn't make the motion.
Okay, I'll precede it with the words I move.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's my motion that we.
Could you go over that again,
Yeah.
Bob?
The motion was to postpone for 14 days to seek legal counsel and interpretation as to the necessity to process this as an appeal of an administrative decision before we move on to the actual variance.
Before we,
Clarify that.
if I can hold you up just for a moment, it's still actually open to the public. I need to finish
Oh,
up
I'm
with
sorry,
that.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pat, you have something else you want to add?
I just wanted to make a comment, if that is the route that you're going to go, that we should, I would suggest that we say legal counsel in the event if you're gonna put a 14-day time expiration on it. If Mark Puffer is not available, you could seek legal counsel to the second one that we use. That's all.
Okay, then for the purpose of seeking legal counsel, and seeing as the selectmen historically seem to have a problem with going there, for the official record now, you're authorizing myself, representative of the board, to talk to the attorney in question.
We don't have that authority right now, but we can take it up with the board Thursday night. I'm sure that the rest of the selectmen would concur, but we have to be in a duly authorized selectmen's meeting to make any decision.
Okay, I can buy that, but your intentions would be to seek that now.
That's correct.
Assuming that you couldn't get an agreement in that, where are we supposed to go from there?
I'm sure there won't be a problem with that, but we can address that with you. We could call a special selectmen's meeting tomorrow, so we could be very timely on this.
I should think it would be a technicality.
No, I'm just looking for
Yeah.
information relative to how it would be handled. Now, is this,
Considering the importance of the decision that you're being asked to make, I'm sure the Board of Selectmen would understand that.
And if I could raise an objection,
you're certainly part of
I'm
it.
supposed to raise objections immediately, and that is, it appears that the Board of Selectmen are dictating who the zoning board of adjustment can use for legal counsel, and the Board of Selectmen is a completely separate entity in town, and this application may be going in front of them for other issues, and there may be appeals of the issues that would go in front of the board, and I would object to the Board of Selectmen dictating who the ZBA can use for legal counsel.
Mr. Chairman?
You're going somewhere where I don't know. The selectmen historically, or at least for the last couple of years, have been very specific about the fact that they don't want anybody going to an outside attorney unless they have approved it. And as to who that's going to be. They've never openly said that. So let me go back to Catherine here.
The reason the selectmen want to hear from boards and committees before they go to attorneys is simply financial, spending money. The Board of Selectmen would not presume to dictate to the zoning board of adjustment who specifically they should seek counsel with. The question was asked of me, who do we normally use for an attorney? We use several, and I said to you that Mark Puffer typically handles land use. The Board of Selectmen would not dictate to the zoning board of adjustment what attorney they would use. They'd be free to choose.
It has a point. When I was chairman of the ZBA in the early 80s, I had my own set of attorneys that I used. The only requirement was I just had to notify the Board of Selectmen that I intended to
Exactly.
do that, and I did that through the land use.
It strictly has to do with spending the money from the budget.
What would happen if the attorney could not make that decision? Where would it go?
He's gonna give an opinion, that's all he's gonna do. He's not making any
What if he
decisions.
doesn't give you an opinion?
I'm sorry?
What if he does not give you an opinion based on the language?
Have you ever
If he
known
doesn't give us an
not to?
opinion, we're not gonna pay him.
He might say, well, it's the zoning board's responsibility to make that
No,
decision.
that's not.
They're asking for a decision.
I-
I would like to know what question is going to be raised to the attorney.
I think we have two issues.
So what do you have?
A, has a precedent been set on this,
Yes.
you know, and should we follow suit on that? And B, whether it's necessary to even rule on that as an appeal of an administrative decision, quote unquote. Those are my questions.
Well, I would think that you'd have to rule one way or another. You just can't say we're not gonna rule in this case. You have to make one decision one way or the other. And,
Not necessarily.
okay, I'm sorry. So let my attorney do it. That's what I pay him for. I just sit here and look pretty bad. Yeah, keep trying. Thanks, Steve. You always got my back.
I hear what you're saying, but the issue here, of course, is that Bob described it, and considering the fact that although we're a quasi-judicial board, we're not attorneys, and if things are going to get involved with whether we really have an action that we have to follow through on, or if it's something, well, let's go down that path and find out, because that's the logical way to go. I'd much rather go to a conservative direction
Right, I
than
agree.
to go stick my neck in the guillotine and only have it come back and hurt me in the future.
Okay.
So if that's, we go back to, is anything further from the public at this point in time? Okay, then I'll close it to the public. We're back to the board, and we're discussing now Bob's motion,
Okay, have a second.
which, I'm sorry?
You need a second.
Right, exactly, but I'd like you to read the motion again.
I I didn't even get it all the first time. It says move to postpone 14 days to seek legal counsel, and then it was like fading off. We went off on this.
Can we,
I'm trying to recall exactly what I said now.
can we consider taking out the 14-day thing? That seems to be a rather definitive thing.
Well, I'm using that figure because that's what's authorized in the rules of procedure. If you want to just go without the deadline, so.
Well, I was gonna say postpone until our next meeting, and certainly that would give us time to get it done.
If that's acceptable.
That's a special meeting.
What kind of time constraints does he have? Any at all? No, it's not a consideration.
Okay, do you have any time constraints at all?
Mr. Bernard would waive any objection to going to the next meeting, if that's
Oh,
good for you.
Makes sense, you know,
Yeah.
we meet once a month, right, we'll just meet the
Yeah,
next
very good
session.
then.
okay, take the 14-day thing out there.
Okay.
And,
Until the May 15th meeting?
Regular meeting, sure.
Okay. To seek legal counsel?
Regarding the necessity to rule on this as an appeal to an administrative decision, I'll stop there till you catch up.
Necessity to rule.
You have your tape recorder going?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, it's going. Listen to rule.
And I believe that was modified by someone. An effort was made to modify it. Who was that? Was that? No, okay. I'll let that stand as it is. I thought someone brought up a change to it. Anything else?
I don't know, you ready to read it back to us?
No, it says regarding necessity to rule on,
Oh, the two issues that you brought up, one being, is this a decision that would call for an appeal by the
Right.
zoning board? And,
Appeal of an administrative decision.
decision of
And whether or not a precedent has been established, a parking precedent has been established in the setback zones.
yeah, I think that's pretty much saying what we need to get an opinion on. I'm wrong on that.
What do you think?
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second,
I'll second.
we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so much for the appeal to administrative decision.
Well, at this point, Mr. Brown, we're just like the variance application table until issues sorted out.
Okay,
Should be-
okay, so we'll continue the variance, well, actually, we'll continue the whole thing until next month.
Right.
And just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. Appreciate it.
That wasn't too bad.
Okay, thanks
for your
again.
cooperation, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on here, time being 7:20, to our next case, which is a CBA case 12-05, variance for Guyer Auto Wholesalers. Applicant seeks a variance from Article 6, Charter Permitted Uses, Section G1, Article 7, Table of Dimensional Values of the zoning ordinance to permit the display of motor vehicles for sale within the resort commercial district and front setback. Property is located at 968 Laconia Road, Tilton, New Hampshire, in the Resort Commercial District, tax map U1, Lot 4. Does anybody need to disqualify themselves from this thing, this issue? No? Okay, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Mark Bodwin. I'm an attorney at Cleveland Waters and Bass in Concord. I'm representing Guyer Auto Wholesalers tonight. I wanted to introduce everyone here. First, there's Mark Moore, behind the post here, who's the owner and partner in the business. Mark's partner is Jeff Isabel. This is Donald Duvall, who's the surveyor. And also, who's not here tonight, is Yuri, I believe his last name is pronounced Hijack. He's the hydrologist who did the drainage plan associated with the Samberton side of the property.
Stop you just for a moment. Get your last name again.
It's Bodwin, B-E-A, Udoin.
Okay. First, okay.
Mark with a K.
Mark. I don't write it down, I'll forget it in 30 seconds.
I just wanted to give you a framework of how I hope the board would allow me to go forward tonight. I'm gonna give a brief explanation of the property and what we're seeking, and then I'll hand it over to Dawn to give a brief description of the survey he did. And you can ask me any questions with regard to the piece in Tilton. And then I can go through the history of the lot, and then go through the variance criteria, if that's okay. Right now, we're asking for a variance from Article 6, Section G, subsection 1 of the zoning ordinance to allow motor vehicle sales in the resort commercial district. And to the extent applicable, if this board rules that a motor vehicle is considered a structure, a variance from Article 7, Table of Dimensional Values regarding the front setback. And a lot of those issues, I'd have to piggyback on Attorney Nix's explanation earlier tonight. This property, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, it has a business on it, Giguere Auto Wholesalers. It's been a auto lot since the early 90s. The current owners bought it, was back in 2008, Mark?
2007.
2007. This piece is exceedingly unique because the town line between Tilton and San Brenton bisects the lot. And only a sliver, triangular piece, remains in Tilton. So in effect, San Brenton doesn't have any road frontage, it's all in Tilton. But the triangular piece in Tilton is really small. It's a little over 1,500 square feet, 1,568 square feet, which is the equivalent of 0.036 acres. The entire lot is pretty small also. It's 0.35 acres, obviously with the majority of the lot in San Brenton. On the San Brenton side, there are two structures, both associated with the small business. On the Tilton side, there are no structures. However, the applicant does display his motor vehicles, his inventory for sale. And the reason why he does that is because that's the only reasonably located place on the lot where folks traveling along Route 3 can see his inventory. And it's our request here tonight to allow him to continue to display motor vehicles the way he's been doing it for all these years. Because if the board wouldn't grant this variance, he would be forced to put his inventory behind structures, and it couldn't be seen by the public. Right now, John, if you wouldn't mind showing your plan, and this is a slightly different plan than the one that was submitted with our application. The only difference is, since we submitted the application to this board, we've had Yuri, who's the hydrologist, put on his drainage system. And I'll draw your attention to the cross-hatched section here, which is the infiltration system for the drainage issue. And I'll get to that after Don speaks as to why we had to put that in, and how that most of it has to do with the San Brenton zoning board, which we've already gone to and sought relief from, and they've granted. So Don, take over.
Before you leave here, is this what the San Brenton Planning Board has already approved?
Yes, okay. Would you like me to discuss that before Don goes forward? I'll be real brief.
No, I just, go ahead, sure.
Back in, well, I'll take a step back. On January 10th, the applicant met, there was a joint planning board meeting with Tilton and San Brenton. And at that meeting, it was really productive. We came up with a plan going forward of what we would need to do to comply with the ordinances in both towns. And our first plan of action was to get the drainage plans done and to go to the town of Sandwich and ZBA and seek a variance for lot coverage. On February 28th, the San Bernardino ZBA granted the applicant a variance for 60% lot coverage, where he had previously got a variance to allow 30%, so we asked for an additional 30%. Now, we worked very hard to get down to 60. What we proposed and what the San Bernardino ZBA ultimately thought was fine was this crosshatch area back here behind the garage, that is currently paving. That's going to be removed. On the easterly sideline, there's going to be a lot line adjustment with the mini golf folks. Everyone thought that the lot line was where it's shown on the plan. And in fact, some of the applicant's cars are parked near that line now. However, the lot line was less broad than what we had thought. And we've communicated with the mini golf folks, and we have a letter of intent to enter into a lot line adjustment. And by doing so, we're gaining property. So by doing those two things and instituting this infiltration drainage system, the town of Sampleton granted us a variance for lot coverage up to 60%. Does that answer your question, Chair?
Yeah. It's just, I didn't know where that had stood at this point in time, but apparently everything's been resolved.
And if it's I do have copies of their decision, it'll be helpful. I do have copies of Yuri's drainage report, that'll helpful to submit to the board today.
No, that would be more of a planning board issue, maybe it's filling out.
Basically, I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say other than this parcel, like the attorney said, is predominance of it is in Samberton. It's a very small portion in Tilton, where, like you said, where the vehicles are displayed. The portion in Tilton is completely paved, and it's all within what would be the building setback limit. So like he says, we've gone to Samberton, got relief from the zoning board for coverage. Our next step, we're just waiting to see how this variance turns out. Then we can proceed with going through the lot line adjustment and the site plan approval from the town of Sandbarton and also from Tilton. If that's, I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but technically I have two planning boards to go through. I've got to get building site plan approval and lot line adjustment from Sandbarton, and I have to get the same thing from Tilton. Because as you will see, this is the present lot line. It's just like 50, I may even change it, but there's about 54 square feet in Tilton that we would have to do as part of our lot line adjustment. And again, there's a way around it, I may just get away with that part for the Tilton. We'll still have to go through Tilton for a site plan approval.
Right.
And essentially, between the Pirates Cove, there was a post and rail fence at the edge of pavement. Everybody assumed that that was the property line. What they were going on was it's a town line bound. They were thinking that the town line bound was the property bound. So again, with Yuri and the area that we would need to get the infiltration system, we're proposing a lot line adjustment with the Pirates Cove. Like I said, they've gone in theory, they're going with it, and Jeff is meeting with the gentleman from Pirates Cove. I think he said on May 19th, they're coming up to walk the property, and we can show them exactly. Once we get their approval in writing that they can go for it, we're gonna go for it, get all our plans done. But at this point, until we get the final decision from Tilton, we're kind of in a limbo. We cannot proceed. I've got to know which way we're going as far as my site plan. So unless you have any questions on the plan. Okay, thank you.
I do have one question, or a couple of questions here. Do you have an updated curb cut from the state?
No, again, that's on our to-do list. And until we find out if we get the variance from Tilton, I don't know where to apply for it. I've got to find out.
Well, the question in my mind here is, inasmuch as we don't know what kind of restrictions the state would put on you in a curb cut.
Well, basically, the curb cut, I can tell you, the state will only allow a 50-foot opening. The property is about 90 feet all open. Most likely, part of the curb cut from the state would require some type of closing of 40 feet of what we don't use of that. It'll be, we'll be talking with the state as they want a barrier, a permanent barrier such as like curbing, or would they allow us to put, we've talked about putting pipes in there with chains and that's safe for plowing, they could pull them out. Again, we've got to deal with the state. But until I know that, say, Tilton's gonna allow us to place vehicles there, so I can say, okay, the vehicles are going here, I'm gonna be putting my curb cut here. So, I really need a
Considering we don't know if the state's gonna put any restrictions on you as to where that barrier will be. In other words,
Excuse me, in the folder, there's a letter from DOT.
right, I have the letter, yes.
Okay.
But that really speaks to the fact that it can't put anything permanent there and it's 25 feet from the center line. We know that. So my other question is, without knowing, because I haven't gone out to measure, if you go from the center line of that road, how far does that 25 feet go into your property?
As you look on the plan, here's about the edge of the pavement. We're about, yeah, just point. Here's the edge of pavement.
Okay,
Here's our property here, the town line bound. If you got, oh, good.
I do.
Yeah, you got a 20 scale. Maybe put my glasses on too. Looks like it's approximately 20 feet. Just as a note, prior when we had the meeting with,
From the edge of
pavement,
payment.
the property,
And how much room is that going to?
basically, we cannot, the client cannot place anything in the state right away.
Right.
Like I said, at the joint meeting, concerns were raised, I'm not sure if it was from Tilton or Sanborn. Vehicles were basically in the state right away. And we agreed, and I guess they have pulled them back because concerns are raised that you really can't see, especially with the post office across the street. People are trying to make that, so they did pull all the vehicles. I've gone out and we've marked where the state right of way is. Actually, we've marked where the town line is. They brought the vehicles away out of the state right of way for safety measures. So again, all I can think of is that the state would say, okay, you're allowed a max of 50 feet open, 50 foot opening. I don't think it'll be that wide. And just based on DOT permits I've gotten from like Division 5, they say, okay, if you've got a wide open area, you've got to close part of it. The issue with DOT was to what extent do they want it closed? Like I said, are they going to want curbing or a fence or pipes with a chain so at least the vehicles displayed behind it are visible?
Okay, so they'll be out of the ROW, but they'll be in our setback.
They will be, yes, they would be in your setback on
And that includes,
land in Tilton.
that includes the west setback on the side as well.
Right. Because basically, I think you have a 30-foot setback, so a front setback. So for all intents and purposes, that whole portion of land is within the setback.
Yeah.
You cannot do anything outside of the setback because there's no land there. I believe this is this is just about 30 feet right there.
Yeah.
So whatever relief we are granted, I'll leave the attorney as to how he's going to phrase it. Do you have anything more for me, or?
Don't know yet.
Well,
Robert?
No, I'm good. good.
You're good.
He's answered my question. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Well, in that case, let's open it up to the public, see what the public has,
I had a few more
Sure.
things I wanted to
Sure.
mention, run through the variance criteria, and,
I will have you do that before we, actually, I guess you can do that now.
is that okay? So, I think you have a good understanding of the problem here that we face. We have, 95% of the lot is in Sanbornton. It's a permitted use to sell and display vehicles in Sanbornton. However, the valuable part of the lot for sale purposes is in Tilton because it has a reasonable visibility from the road. So if we can't continue to display cars in some manner in that triangular section, the entire small business will be put in jeopardy. And again, it has been used as a car lot since the early 90s. And we can't stress enough how important it is for the folks traveling on the roads to see the vehicles for sale. And again, I did want to reiterate one other thing about the planning board meeting. The planning board did have concerns about safety issues regarding once someone's turning left into the post office, occasionally cars will go into the right-of-way in order to get around that one car. And our client can't really stop that, but I think a way to improve that in order to create some sort of barrier in between the parked cars, which will remain out of the right-of-way on the applicant's property, will be to put up a removable barrier, so to make sense, so it can be taken down for plowing purposes, but also to restrict any, you can't access it when it's up. You can't access the road while the barrier is up. And we'll leave it to the board to brainstorm with us, if it's agreeable, different ways that we could do that barrier. And Mark suggested putting up some sort of fencing with a chain in between. We're cautious of keeping it aesthetically pleasing, so we wouldn't want to use orange cones, but perhaps some planters that could be put up, just so if a car, again, chooses to go into the right-of-way, that there will be a clear demarcation between where our property begins and where the right-of-way ends. And to date, there is nothing there now, and it will be hard for a driver to know that.
Well, if your vehicles are being parked perpendicular to the road behind the right-of-way, does it make any difference if these cars go onto that right-of-way for 3 or 4 feet to get around a left-turning vehicle? They do it everywhere else.
That's where it happens. It happens
That's not going to actually create an accident with your parked vehicles or anything, is it?
No,
It's
to my
still gonna be
knowledge,
clearance.
there have been no accidents, correct?
No.
It's just gonna tear up the apron, I know.
Yeah. Occasionally cars get close, but the planning board expressed some sort of clear, they suggested that maybe this board would want some sort of clear demarcation between where the right-of-way ends and the lot line begins. And we're totally willing to do that, as long as it can be movable, so they can, for plowing purposes. So we wouldn't want to put up a stone wall or something, but perhaps some fencing with chain in between that could be taken down. That would be aesthetically pleasing. And if you didn't have any other questions, I would like to run through the variance criteria.
Please, go ahead, do it. Carter.
First, and again, keep in mind that the board, we were told when we first applied that there may be an inclination to call that the car is a structure. And if this board so ruled, although we would disagree with that, then we would also need to apply for a variance for the setback encroachment. So it's the dual-pronged request. First, to allow motor vehicle sales in the resort commercial district. And then again, if this board comes to the conclusion that the ordinance definition of structure includes a car, which we don't believe it does, the ordinance says any object constructed or installed by man. It's certainly not affixed to the ground, it's movable. It's akin to anything that can be moved. I mean, it's not on stilts or a foundation, it's not a structure. You understand what I'm
This seems to touch on the previous appeal.
Yes, it does, and we were glancing at each other as that conversation went back. For the variance criteria, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. This lot is situated directly between two other commercial lots. On one side, you have the mini golf, and the other side, you have the gentleman that sells trailers. And then within eyesight, you have Sears, which displays lawn tractors, garden tractors. And then you also have,
They're gone.
oh, is it gone?
Yeah,
They just went out of
Oh,
business.
that's too bad. And then you have, I believe on either direction, a marina, and they sell boats in the same fashion. So we would say that continuing to allow the display in the vehicles would be consistent with the nearby existing commercial uses. This has coexisted with many restaurants and accommodations in the past, something that the resort commercial district was intended to try and increase. It's commingled with these existences for many years, and by allowing it to stay the same, you don't see any detriment to that. That's why we believe it would not be contrary to the public interest. Second, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Again, granting the variance would not alter the character of the neighborhood or threaten the health, safety, or welfare of the public. We thought that if this barrier, in your opinion, would increase the safety somehow from people doing that, it would be helpful in that respect. The proposed continued use is consistent with neighboring properties, and that's why we believe the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Granting the variance will do substantial justice. There's little public benefit if the variance is denied, but significant loss to the applicant if it were denied, because he could no longer reasonably operate his small business. And again, I can't say enough that this is a permitted use in San Brenton, and the whole lot would be rendered in jeopardy if we couldn't continue to display vehicles in some sort in that area. They would not, and that's the substantial justice requirement. Number 4, the surrounding properties would not be diminished. This property is located along a highly traveled road in the commercial neighborhood. The property in its current configuration and use is consistent with other commercial landscapes, again, situated directly between two other commercial lots. The necessary hardship criteria. We believe that denial of variance would result in unnecessary hardship. I find it hard to think of any lot which is more unique than this. I don't believe there would be any lot, perhaps the adjacent one may have some similar issues, in the town of Tilton that's so situated and so and needing the variance in order to have a reasonable use of the lot. It is the only reasonably visible area on Route 3. Again, it's existed in this configuration for a number of years. And our proposal would be, again, to situate vehicles in the triangular portion in Tilton. We would stay out of the right-of-way, and we would do everything possible to comply with the ordinance. We've already done a lot of work. The applicant unfortunately inherited some compliance issues when he bought the property that he didn't know about. And again, the town of San Brenton is on board. That their variance is contingent or subject to us following through with the infiltration system, removal of the asphalt behind the garage. And we believe that in order to keep a reasonable use of the lot, this variance should be granted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Relative to the criteria? criteria?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Do you feel that they've covered the criteria and sufficiently?
I feel that he's covered it as well as you can, it can be expected, considering the uniqueness of the property.
If I'm not mistaken, where you have the trailers next to you on the west side
Yes.
of your property, as I recall, they put trailers all the way out to the road, do they not?
That's
Seems like I've seen them. It's been a while since I've been up there, but it seems like they do that.
Seems like, yeah, I think they do, yeah. Yeah, at times I've seen them back there.
Just a point to ponder here. So once again, if you have nothing else at this point in time, does the board have anything else you want to question them on? Or open it up to the public?
I have no other questions. No, thank you.
Okay, then this time we'll open it up to the public. You're number one.
Thank you. Although I'm not opposed to the variance on this, I do have a concern of them not doing the due diligence and going to the state for curb cut. I question whether or not this, and I'm not sure how to put this, but in the recent, not too recent past, we've had the state take a second look at properties that have been sold and resold on Route 3, and they've changed the driveway entrance and exits on some of the properties that have been sold and resold. So to assume that it would be a 50-foot and then there would be a barrier, there may be an entrance and an exit, we don't know that. I would prefer that they have a curb cut designed by the state before granting the variance, and then we know exactly what the state is requiring. They have made some changes in the not too recent past.
Did I just interrupt you, Mark? If we would so choose to grant a variance, it would certainly be subject to whatever the state's going to put in their curb cut.
Yeah.
Without question, we can't overrule what the state's going to do.
Yeah, clearly we would have to comply with the state
Sure.
regulation on the curb cut. I don't see, I guess there's a question of chicken or the egg here, but we want to know if we're allowed to display vehicles in the area before applying for the curb cut. And if we are allowed to display vehicles in the area, then we'll go for the curb cut and we'll be directed by the state as to what we can and cannot do in that area as far as accessing the property. And I defer to Don and his experience on these things of the chronology of applying, but it seems to make sense in our opinion.
It was my opinion to the client that I want to know, as a surveyor applying, I want to know what we have to deal with in each town. So we've got the issue done with Samberton with lot coverage, boom, that's done. Now I want to know what I am going to be allowed to be doing in Tilton with respect. Now once I know everything, that all the uses I can do, now I can intelligently go to the state and ask for a curb cut. I would hate to go up to the state now, get a curb cut, and for whatever reason, based on what this board does, have to go back to the state and change it. So I have advised my client, let's get all our ducks in a row, get our variances, and like they said, we're gonna be, you cannot override what the state's gonna tell us. I can tell you right now, the entrance, for all intents and purposes, is gonna be where it is now. May shift a little bit, one way, but there's really only one place to go. You cannot have two curb cuts.
Yeah, it's the most logical place.
It's logical, and the state would only allow you one anyhow. We do not have enough frontage for an in and an out. So basically, I've advised my client that the max opening you're allowed is 50 feet. We may not, chances are we will not need it that large, but we're allowed a 50-foot opening plus the turnouts. And again, based on what I've done with the state before, if you've got all that area open, they'll make you barricade it off one way or another. We've done it in Hooksett. They allowed us to put railroad ties with big spikes down through the ground. That was one thing they allowed, but all the state we will propose to the state what we wanna do, and they will either concur with us or say, no, you have to do something more substantial. So I think that's,
Yes, you've put off applying for a curb cut up till now supposedly because you haven't done this footwork with the town.
exactly, I don't know
But you've been in
what,
business now for a couple of years.
pardon?
You've been in business here for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, but I got involved when we found out that they were, that the town of Sanverton was requiring an updated site plan of the whole thing. And then we got into the portion of, okay, we're gonna do the site plan, all the drainage. Then we got into the portion of, well, Tilton doesn't allow us to put I'm talking to my client, doesn't allow them to display cars. So until I can find everything that the towns are gonna allow us to do, now I know the whole story, now I can intelligently go for a curb cut from the state. And again, I think they do have some type of curb cut, but due to the nature of the business, it's gonna have to be updated. And like I say, there's really only one viable spot to go in, essentially where it is, so we're basically going to be legitimizing where it is now and any other information that the state requires.
Anyone else out there? No, well, this time then we'll close it to the public, back to the board.
Well, I think it's too bad that, I mean, I think we could expedite this without, if it weren't for the need to get this issue with the structure straightened out, parking
So what, I'm sorry?
structure.
Oh, in other words, relative to this legal opinion, so that we've already, I'm not in the same qualms with
Yeah,
that
it's
too.
amazing that the two cases are basically related in that sense, you know?
That is correct.
Okay.
You know where we're coming from on that, based upon the previous thing?
We were here for that.
Yeah, we're kind of in a situation now where you're both pursuing something that would be affected by that letter in order to resolve that. And so in that case, I'd be inclined to make it wait until we got that opinion letter also.
If I may, I know it's close, but I do see a distinction.
Not to you.
I do see a distinction between the prior applicant and us. Here, I don't believe you would be setting precedent because the property is so unique. It's totally different than a normal straight parallel setback. I mean, the entire display area is within the setback. Yeah, I would just offer that for the board's consideration.
I agree with the fact that it's most unique, no question about that. The fact that we're allowing vehicles to occupy a setback is the part that I have a problem with, primarily.
It's unfortunate that the issue has been brought to the forefront like that after so many years, you know, of having an established precedent, but I tend to agree with you that we probably should get that resolved.
Yeah, because of the uniqueness, I mean, I tend to agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I would lean in favor of some use of that area. At this point in time, barring lack of knowledge of what kind of a opinion letter we're going to get from an attorney to give us guidance relative to this whole issue, so we're not just wandering around in the abyss, going one way on one case and another way on another case. I don't want to do that. So, I mean, I think we just, continue it, make a motion like we did for the last one.
We have enough input from the applicant, from the public, from the abutters, that if we did get an opinion on this prior to the next regular session, I was thinking that we Is it possible that we could meet to make a decision on this particular issue?
With the applicants involved in it? I mean, how could we do it without them?
Yeah, we probably have to,
We've already committed ourselves to the next meeting.
yeah.
We can't pull something out in the middle of that. But I mean, you know, you've waited this long at this point in time, that another month is not going to really have anything, and that might iron the whole thing out. Short and sweet.
Other than we will have to notify Sampleton, because they want us due diligence, that we're just going to have to notify them that we're gonna be delayed another month. So, just so they won't think we're, the client is dragging their feet. So,
No, sure, blame us.
Sampleton's concern was, sure, we've okayed this plan, but we want you to do it, you know, ASAP regarding removal of the asphalt and removal of, it's the infiltration system. So we didn't plan for a continuance here, but that doesn't mean, I don't think that's a reasonable decision. But keep in mind, we do have, the main variance request is for the use. And then we have this ancillary contingent request if you so decide that the vehicles are considered a structure. So there are two separate things on the table here. And I'm not sure how the board wants to deal with that. But they are overlapping. Sure.
Mm-hmm. It does need clarification, there's no question about that. It's, whether we do it, I mean, I find a difficulty in considering a vehicle as a structure. Okay. Did,
I guess if there's no other rebuttals in either direction, I would make a motion that we postpone
Okay.
pending resolution of the interpretation issue.
Oh, yeah, like you said, there's two issues here.
Oh, there's two issues.
Yeah, the two issues, one being whether vehicles are to be considered structures,
Yeah,
okay, and also
Whether
the
to-
use of the property.
allow the sale, vehicle sales.
Now, the only thing I'm questioning, the table of dimensional values has to do with the, that has to do with the use of the property itself. And the application doesn't
It's
really,
not,
the application doesn't talk about the other part, which, as to whether a vehicle is considered a structure.
No.
You brought this into the picture, but this is really not what the application, nor would it have been advertised as such.
We amended our application, so it's clear that we're asking for a variance to allow motor vehicle sales within the reserve commercial district and a variance from the 30-foot front setback. We do discuss it in the amended variance application, but quite frankly, we've never uncovered an ordinance that calls a vehicle a structure. It says if you park your car overnight in the side setback, it's prohibiting that for everyone in the future. It doesn't make any sense to us. So we put it in a footnote in the first page. We say, to the extent this board somehow decides that a vehicle is a structure, then this application also constitutes a variance, seeking a variance for an encroachment into the front setback. But truthfully, we didn't give, until, recently, earlier this afternoon, we didn't think the planning board came to the conclusion that you couldn't park in the setback. And that's basically what this is, parking in a setback. the vehicles aren't moved nightly. By the very nature of the business, they're moved when they're sold. But certainly, if there's a truck parked there now, there may be a car parked there tomorrow. But in our view, the way the ordinance is written, any object constructed or installed by man doesn't include a car.
Yeah, I see, I agree with you.
So we can,
We could probably go with that.
yeah.
And define that once and for all. It's a good suggestion.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, fine with that?
Yeah. You know, normally, I mean, it's not a permitted, normal permitted use in that zone, but because it's in the extreme eastern end of it, and just touching it, the tip of it. Are we discussing that now?
No, what I'm getting at is making the determination how this board is going to determine whether a vehicle is considered a structure.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I agree with the applicant here.
Yeah.
That I've always had a problem with considering a vehicle a structure.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a
Doesn't make
structure.
sense to me
I
at
don't
all.
think that fits within the intent of the ordinance, to be honest with you.
I couldn't agree with you more. Doesn't even sound logical.
Okay, then why don't we deal with it? Make a motion to,
How's that gonna affect, if anything, the previous case? No effect on that?
that we're not talking about the parking in the setbacks, we're talking about now whether a vehicle constitutes a structure.
Yeah.
And just if we go with a variance, that would by virtue of our interpretation, the vehicle would not be considered a structure for the purpose of this ordinance. That's something to that effect.
Sounds about right. Works for me.
So put it in words for me and we'll move forward.
Put it in words for you?
Yeah, put it in a form of a motion. I don't want to make a motion. As the chair, I'd rather you make it and go. Be a good motion maker. Start bringing stronger stuff. That's where we're really going with this issue. And I agree with you. I always have a problem with that, but it's never really come to a head up to now. Yes, I'm gonna send you down and return it once you get the. Grab hold with me.
Yeah.
Put it down and, Okay, now, let me just, this is in the form of a variance.
It is.
Or we would have, well, there's nothing else we at this board have the authority to do. We can't just make a ruling, so to speak. I'd say, grant them a variance. To the effect that a vehicle is not to be considered a structure. just strictly a variance, as though he came before us seeking an appeal to an administrative decision, but it's really not that.
Yeah. So,
Okay. See, if this were in the form of administrative decision, it would be easier to rule on. Now, I think maybe the other way is maybe,
I still think we're going back to the same issue that we had with the previous case. It has to be resolved before we can move forward.
but that had to do with the actions within the setback. This is strictly a vehicle itself that we're talking about. Is a vehicle to be considered a structure?
Okay, that's why I wrote the one motion, is it?
True, but I mean, it has to be in the form of either granting an appeal to administrative decision, or a variance, or a special exception. That's all this board can really do.
so
You got a suggestion?
we have a two-prong request tonight. Our first prong, our primary question is whether or not you will allow us to display and sell vehicles in the resort commercial district.
Correct.
That's always been our goal, that's what we decided at the joint planning board meeting, what your planning board said to us to come to you for.
Correct.
Correct.
We submitted the application without any mention of the setbacks. We heard from the planning administrator that there may be an issue with the setback, so we amended our application to include that. So tonight, you very well could vote on whether or not we get a variance to continue to display and sell motor vehicles in the resort commercial district. That's open-ended. The only other issue is, to the extent, if you do deem it, this way what you may be seeking advice on, if you do deem a car a structure, then we would need a second variance, but only if you make that determination. So I can understand on the second prong why you may want to wait, but on the first prong, there's a quorum, you could possibly vote on that tonight unless you wanted to postpone the entire thing until next month.
I concur with you 100%. That's where I was going with part A. Part B later on after we get, meet with our legal counsel.
So in effect.
Regarding the structure issue. I wanted to address the issue of whether or not they could sell vehicles in the RC zone.
Okay. I follow.
And that's what I'm sorry, that's what I thought you were, that's where I thought you were headed. Because that is the first part of their meeting. Yeah.
That's true.
But since they've been doing it before, would it be grandfather?
No, because it was never approved to begin with.
It's never approved, yeah.
They just came in and started doing it.
But since it's such a small tip of the zone, you know, yeah, it's actually, technically it's inside the RC zone, which I've never really been in favor of used car sales or any car sales or repair shops like that for automobiles in the resort commercial zone. But because this is right at the tip of it, and it's just a little piece of the pie, and it has been there all these years, I don't think it's going to change the character of the RC zone as it pertains to the rest of the zone, because there are already other, you know, recreational sales going on here for boats and so forth. And I don't have a problem with it personally. I think, I understand where they're coming from. They really need to get those vehicles out close to Route 3 for visibility. And it's at such a small piece of the RC zone. RC zone, it's not in the middle, it's not, you know, going to affect our zone at all. It's right at the end. You know, I'm okay with it, but that's all I can say.
Okay? Put in the whole motion. That's fine.
Well, has anybody else got anything to discuss?
I agree with you. I mean, for what that's worth at this point in time. I mean, you know, one of the reasons that I think we would have to give for the variance is the fact that it's the most unique situation with this piece of property. It's unfortunate that if that little bit is in Tilton. But from what I learned looking into it from another angle years ago, when I worked in this office, to try and change that and give Samberton that piece of property
That's
is
real difficult.
a massive problem. But that would be a simple way to deal with it, because it's just, back in the days when they laid it out, what were they thinking? Who knows? So put it in the form of a motion, let's work with it. Because that would be my primary reason for going along with that, is that the uniqueness of the property and the fact of what's on both sides of it to begin with, or in addition to it. Get him a bigger pad so I can read what he's writing.
I'll read it to you.
I hope so.
It's, what I'm saying here is, John, is to authorize the sale of motor vehicles within the resort commercial zone, and to display said vehicles within the front setback contingent upon approval of the DOT curb cut. Does that cover everything?
Well, you've included both parts of that in there when you're
That's
to
true.
display.
You didn't have to go into the,
Right.
yeah.
You were fine in the first half, but then you've gone ahead and gone with the second.
So we should just end it right there then, short and simple, right?
Yeah, to authorize, variance to authorize the sale of motor vehicles within the resort commercial zone.
Okay. Yeah,
That
you're
makes
right.
it the whole zone, right? That makes it this whole area.
Well,
Well, like that
it's
whole-
all RC, no,
Right.
well, but it's only relative to this lot. And that's the way that it'll come out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not doing spot zoning or,
Well, no,
Or
the way
change.
that first part you read made it to me sound like you're authorizing it for the whole.
well, he is
That whole
within,
thing.
he is within the RC.
He's in the
Right.
RC,
But
but
like I said, he's at the far tip, so.
Right.
it's only applicable to the lot that's on the appeal.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to allow everybody to do that.
Okay.
And that's
Well, I
not-
just don't want to see a bunch of.
It's a
car
very-
lots on.
Right, well, the variance is for their particular lot.
All right.
Okay, you wanna go with that?
So the motion is to authorize the sale of motor vehicles within the resort commercial zone. Just as simple as that.
Yes.
You wanna specify by Jagir Auto Wholesalers?
I don't think that, the variance runs with the land.
Yeah.
However, I do want to, from past experience, and the one that we need to put a couple conditions on that. One of the conditions, I would say, is that, it's been a long time since we've had occasion to use it, but, that should it cease to be utilized, should the variance cease to be utilized for more than a year,
For a period of 1 year.
for a period of 1 year, that the variance will be null and void. So in other words, as long as you're there and assuming that everything else goes through, the variance is good while you're there, and actually, if you sold the property, it's good, as long as it keeps being used for that. But if it goes away, and somebody moves in there and wants to make it a house and live in it, then after a year, it's null and void, as far as the variance goes. And we did seek a legal opinion on that, whether we could put that in a variance. Let's see, should we authorize the sale of motor vehicles within the RC district? Yeah, with that as a condition. And
That should do it.
I think we can stop right there.
I think so, yeah. Sounds good. I'm okay with that modification. Did you get all of that, Augusta?
I got everything on the condition. Should the variance cease to be used for 1 year, it will expire or it'll be void?
It will become null and void.
Okay.
Or you can say it'll expire too. I mean,
Okay.
see, either one.
Used for 1 year, it will expire, or,
And say expire and become null and void. Okay, you have the motion now, too?
to authorize sale of motor vehicle within the resort commercial zone with the following conditions. Should the variance cease to be used for 1 year, it will expire and become null and void.
Okay, that's the motion. Looking for a second. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we got over the first hurdle. Next hurdle, well, we'll let you know in a month.
So our second variance request will be postponed until the next regular scheduled meeting.
Right, and keep in mind, this could have, that, depending what we get from council, could have a significant bearing on your whole plan here, really.
So I guess the question becomes, if it comes out on our favor and you decide that a vehicle is not a structure, then our request for a variance would be moot. We wouldn't need one, right?
That's on the
Second variance, just to cover that aspect of it?
Yeah, the second variance is, to the extent we need a variance.
Why would they need another variance?
They wouldn't at that point in time.
So if the legal opinion comes in our favor.
Because that's why the whole thing has to do with operating within the setback.
Okay.
Is this to be considered a structure?
So the question becomes.
Does our wait a minute, does our ordinance specify it with intent and in word that it is in fact a structure? Is that
Yeah.
correctly said?
So when we come next month, we very well could not need to present because you've come to the conclusion that a variance wouldn't be needed for what we're asking for.
I would say that would be correct.
Or if it comes the other way, then we would go ahead again with our presentation and go over it again and you would vote on that.
Then you'd be looking for a variance to actually do that in the setback.
But you're not planning on notifying us how it goes in between. It would just be, it would show up next month and we would learn how the attorney.
I don't know why if we receive a letter from council showing, we'd be happy to forward a letter to you.
Yeah, I would.
Because I'm looking at the expense to my client. They don't want me to show up if in fact I don't need to be there.
I
You know
understand.
what I'm saying?
Right, I understand, because it could be you don't need to be there.
So that if there's any way that you could alert us that we don't need to show up, that would be most appreciative. Otherwise, I understand we'll show up ready to go.
Okay, well, I'll make sure Gus has your address,
Yeah,
email, whatever.
I do.
And we'll be happy to give you whatever we can get. And we'll continue everything until the May 17th, May 15th Was it May 15th meeting?
Yes, May 15th.
And
You wanna give it time?
you got something on there already, though?
Yeah, I'll do 6:30.
Okay.
No, my car's in the shop. I borrowed one to get here. Then I had to put away a bag.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job, thank you.
Urgent meetings.
Yeah. It's not keeping running.
Yeah.
So I left it there, grabbed my mom's. Good
Good night, thank you.
Okay, good night. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here when we got here.
I know, I had to get my mom's car.
Are we adjourned?
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn? Unless we have any other business. Wait, we have any other business before we pull the water?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction.
I figured she knew who I was because I was the
Is the
latest one.
meeting, is the meeting adjourned?
The meeting is in fact adjourned. The last remark is.
You know where